Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again this day. And our next talk from the lecturers of the summer school in data science will be about information reliability and fake news detection and all of this. So it's fake news, like really popular term, specifically because of I don't know, last year accidents in different domains in different countries. For Ukraine, it's a really important topic. So I think it would be really interesting for all of us to take this first touch to this domain. So our speaker for tonight is Manuel Gomez Rodriguez. He's a lecturer at the summer school. He just finished his course on machine learning for dynamic social network analysis. So Manuel came to us from Max Planck Institute on software systems, and from Kaiserslautern, right? Excuse me. So Manuel got his PhD and master degree in Stanford, and then he was a postdoc in another Max Planck Institute in information systems, right? Intelligence systems. So please welcome Manuel, and the floor is yours.
So thanks for the nice intro. I'm very happy to be here. I hope thanks for staying for let's say this public lecture, because somehow it's difficult to imagine that you stay for 2 weeks, like day after day, actually attending lectures. Since at least for me, I was only here 3 days, I'm already kind of wrecked. But so today I will try to somehow not to be very technical. Somehow after hearing the lectures yesterday and the day before, I realized maybe my slides have far too many equations, so I try to remove all of them. Maybe there is one remaining, but it's only one out of 30-something slides. So I guess at any time, I don't know how you want to do it, but if you want to interrupt me for questions, for me it's fine, but maybe you want it at the end. Yeah, okay. So if you want to interrupt me, just interrupt me and I can clarify. So a bit to start, I guess this motivation of, okay, fake news for everybody is kind of, let's say, timely, or that is in the news. So maybe it's not something more to convince you that it's something that is happening. But I would like to start first with a more general motivation. No, that is, if you think in how do you actually access information, how you learn about different topics, how you actually check news and so on, happen that very much is happening on the web. It's like sometimes you may read an actual newspaper in paper, but let's say it's less and less common. No? So this is just an illustration that even if here, I guess there are pretty young people, but I guess children of right now, maybe even they find it weird to have a blackboard, no, instead of a tablet or something like that. And a bit the idea is that this learning about new topics happens in many different online platforms. You can think of Wikipedia, that I guess, how many of you ever use Wikipedia here? I guess, okay. I guess many of you use Wikipedia, so you can go there to learn about a variety of topics, and there are many contributors that are helping to edit in a collaborative fashion Wikipedia, no? And somehow became that, I guess when I was in university doing a bachelor's degree, somehow the teachers were saying, no, you cannot use Wikipedia as a source, but I think that got relaxed over time, since it's a source that is somehow understood as a kind of reputed source. So there are other sites, no, that they are a bit, let's say, less reliable, like maybe some of you know Quora or Stack Overflow, especially people who study computer science, of when you forgot some command, you go to Stack Overflow and you just copy it. So, but there is more elaborated questions, no? And there is, again, people are asking whatever they want to get an answer for, and there are some volunteers that they do exist. One of my PhD students is one of these people that answer 1,000 questions. So, but let's say a few volunteers that somehow answer all these questions that many people have. So in some other domain now, you can also think on sites like these MOOCs, these massive online learning courses that they are trying to compete with normal universities, in the sense that you can access online some online course, you can enroll and you can even do exercises, attend lectures remotely, and so on. So again, this is something that happens through the web. And this like the last example is the example that today I would like to focus about. No, that is many people use actually social media like Facebook, Twitter. I put here Instagram, but perhaps Instagram is for other type of news like friends or celebrities putting photos. But a bit idea is that many people actually use the web to be up to date. And the issue here is that many times it's social media. It's not that everybody goes to New York Times or Le Monde and start to read all the articles, but it's things go much faster pace. Okay, and many times the sources of the information is even unclear, but somehow when you find something that is surprising, people start to sharing it. So what is the problem with this access to information through the web? No, that even some site that supposedly is kind of understood to be quite serious, like Wikipedia, there are even some studies saying that there are a lot of information in Wikipedia that gets falsified over time. No, and here on the top right, what you can see is an example that I took actually from Wikipedia. It's not something I made up. No, that is this. I guess the people that were in the class already recognize this example, but maybe they don't recognize even that somebody changed the surname at some point in the article. No, that is about Barack Obama. They try to say, oh, he's from Kenya or has a second name that seems Muslim, because I guess was in the period of time they try to claim, oh, Obama is not American. So again, this is actually was in Wikipedia for a short period of time because it was something that was clearly not accurate and somebody corrected. But may happen, Wikipedia is huge. So for topics that are or pages that are not so popular, somehow this kind of inaccurate information can be there for long. So in some other more like a news domain, I guess was very known, and there's still discussions. And I guess you have, I mean, Ukraine is close to Russia, so I guess you are also aware of these discussions that there is all these concerns whether actually the campaign of Trump was affected by misinformation, and somehow that they try to involve Russian people there. So this is an example again that is real, well, real. Let's say was in Facebook, but it's not real, that was kind of claiming, oh, the Pope Francis was actually supporting Trump in the elections. No? And this is something that was fabricated, that actually didn't actually happen. But when people start to share this thing, this may be surprising. Some people may not be so aware of whether the Pope Francis would support anybody running for political campaign, and this can have an effect in the outcome of the elections. So this is just to motivate whether in reality the web and social media supposedly was democratic. I mean, being enabling everybody to actually access to news, and at the same time to have all this citizen journalism and so on that would allow people to report news on the spot in real time. But at the same time, there is the question whether actually this kind of system is broken, whether actually internet is broken. No, that you would say is full of misinformation, full of inaccurate details. So here, what I would like to tell you a little bit in this talk is some efforts to try to fight against this. No? And maybe from the introduction, you may have the impression I'm going to tell you, oh, is everything going to be automated? And I have some magic machine learning algorithm that tell whether something is fake or not. But given the complexity of the problem, we will see that we will try to address the problem like combining both machine learning and actually people. No, like when somebody is actually exposed to fake news or exposed to inaccurate information, in many cases they may realize, some of them, not everybody. We will try to use the signals given by humans in combination with algorithms to try to prevent this. And here I will focus in two different problems that will somehow match two different domains. You will understand now what I mean. So the first solution now is or the first setting is to try to resort to the crowd, to actually allow users to verify it or to refute information. Okay, and this, if you think about it, you would say, oh, but many people are misled. But it's already used in certain sites for some type of information that is not perhaps so misleading. No, for example, if you go to a Stack Overflow, that where you have many answers to different questions, people are actually curating these answers. No, most of the times when you go there, you even don't ask a question, but you actually check for a question that you are interested about that somehow other person already asked before. Happens many times that the answer that is more prominently like highlighted in the site is the right answer, is the answer that is more complete. No, that is not simply like algorithms. It's a combination of algorithms and a human input. No, because you would say here, all this number that is here, this 8,080, is that 8,080 people thought was useful, okay, and they upvoted. So in a sense, they are verifying that this answer is kind of a complete answer. It's an answer that provides more information than others. Okay? So in the same way, you could also think of information that get refuted by others. No? When I was writing here the example of Obama is a Kenyan politician, there was somebody here that actually was saying, oh, this is possible vandalism that by some user, and actually corrected this information. So again, in this case, was refuting the information. So you have like many different sites that they are already using these mechanisms. No, it's using the crowd to actually curate the information that they contain. And a bit idea is this is ubiquitous more in like question and answer sites, Wikipedia, in general sites that they have to do with knowledge creation, but let's say sites that they keep being refined over time. Yeah? So this still has challenges. It's not only that you allow people to just curate everything in an, let's say, unsupervised way, because it can happen that actually users are untrustworthy. Maybe sometimes it's not even intentional. It's simply that they don't know about it, but they think they know. And then they may give a verification signal or some refutation signal that is incorrect. Maybe the case that information is disputed, no, is that there is no an agreement. So some people may actually say that is true, while some people say that is false. That is one of the problems of actually all these false news stories, no? And at the same time, there is a third problem that how many of you ever contributed, let's say, answering a question in Stack Overflow? Okay, quite a few. Maybe this is a biased sample. I mean, if I would ask to another audience, probably a few people. In any case, there are many people that are just, these require extra work. It's like when you go to a hotel that you found in booking.com on some site. I mean, it's not always so easy to write a review. Maybe you like the place, but probably you write a review when you hated the place or something like that, more than when you like it. So in a way, it requires extra work from the users. So this opens up also questions of whether you can incentivize people to actually write reviews or to provide feedback so that you can use it to refine the information. So this is one type of solutions that we will focus just in a few minutes. And the other type of solutions that we will focus will be when you actually try to resort to fact-checking by third parties. No? There is all these sites like Snopes, FactCheck, PolitiFact, and so on. That is a group of volunteers that you can send some piece of news saying, I have concerns whether this is true or not, and they do an investigation about it. Okay? And the idea is that some of these sites, I think Facebook is all the time talking about deploying somehow fact checks by these third-party sites. I saw it already once, actually. Maybe I was in some A/B testing or some test Facebook was doing that I had for some link that I was seeing was written there, and actually the link was true. In that case, was not only telling whether the thing is fake, but was only also saying, oh, this news is actually something that is credible, that is actually genuine. But here the problem is that fact-checking is costly. No? It's not that you can send millions of news to those volunteers and they will return you a thorough investigation of the issue. No? And also, this raises the question, no? Since you cannot fact-check everything, you have to decide what to fact-check. So what do you send for fact-checking? No? If you are Facebook, you are Twitter, and you have a queue of length, whatever length it is, to send things for fact-checking, which ones do you choose? Okay? And finally, there is this third question that I guess I don't have an answer for that, and I don't think anybody has. Like, is what do you do after fact-checking? Because even if you know something is false, how do you actually, how do you tell people that maybe they should consider perhaps this is false? So if they want to take an informed decision based on truth, they shouldn't believe that. I'm not sure that would work for everybody. Even sometimes has the opposite effect. No, they would say, "Oh no, is that you are trying to tell me that this is false, but that is false news too." No, so that is something that is very challenging. That I don't know what is the best solution. Okay. So as I said, we are going to focus in two settings. No, like the first setting is going to be how to deal with these knowledge repositories, things like Wikipedia, like Stack Overflow, like if we want to improve the reliability of the information there. Okay. The second setting is harder. It's the case that you have a social network and there is some news that is spreading, and some of them are fake and some of them are not. And you would like at least to detect on time to avoid that people get exposed to misinformation without knowing it, at least. Okay? So why do we divide these two settings? No, here we are trying to compare them. Like on the left side is like for the case of Wikipedia, Stack Overflow, there is one copy of the knowledge that is refined over time. You can think of the Obama article in Wikipedia. People start editing, refining it, and over time keeps improving. So some of the mistakes, inaccuracies, they get actually solved. There is no network effect in the sense that everybody can go to Wikipedia and check this page. And the time scale somehow is slower, is that the article gets built over time. No? On the right-hand side, you have actually multiple copies, perhaps, of the same link. Everybody is sharing a link that may be fake, but you cannot actually refine the link. The link is this piece of news that was an article that was written, and in many cases, it's not that you can say, oh, I'm going to fix the inaccuracies in the article. And you have this network effect. No, is maybe this link is not really. It's not that you can go there. It's not so visible, but somebody has to share it on social media for you to actually get to know that link. So there is actually a network effect, and the time scale is faster. No, if it turns out even if something was false, when it is shared and is really viral and everybody gets to know it, that is actually more like viral than the information that is negating that was false. So in a way, you would like to stop it before everybody already tends to believe it, because it's more difficult to tell people afterwards, no, by the way, this was not true. They will already doubt. So for the first setting, we will try to just combine machine learning and information from the crowd to try to assess which of the information sources are more reliable, more trustworthy, and what of the content in an article is actually more reliable. Okay? And for the second setting, we will try to use machine learning in the crowd and also fact-checking services to try to actually detect when something is fake, and so that prevent that gets actually many people get exposed to this content without knowing that may be fake. So you may wonder, okay, why this goal of saying for the first setting, why we would like to quantify the reliability of the information or the trustworthiness of a source? I guess is that if we would have some method that allow us to identify that, we would be able to actually showcase the reliable information more prominently. We could fix some unreliable information because the method would tell you, oh, this paragraph seems to be inaccurate. And at the same time, you could identify sources that are untrustworthy or sources that are trustworthy. Okay? So in a way, to increase the information quality. So I'm kind of talking about information sources, no? But to make it a bit more concrete, not only tell you information sources, we'll focus in the case of Wikipedia, no? And when you think in Wikipedia, we go here to some page, no? That I guess everybody of you know who is this person. And then if you go to any of the paragraphs, for example, I took a paragraph kind of at random, you see all these little numbers here, no? That the numbers is basically saying where did they find that information? What is the source that is backing up that information? So if we take one of them, no, like this 71, oh, 70, we can see that actually here the information source was the New York Times. So what I'm talking here about information sources in Wikipedia, I mean this kind of news site. It can be New York Times, can be Breitbart, can be Russia Today, can be anything of that sort. So they are like major news sources that somehow Wikipedia editors, they use to actually back up some of the statements they put in an article. So the idea is that we would like to assess whether, for example, New York Times is a actually trustworthy source or not. And for that, we would like to use the traces that we find in Wikipedia. Because in Wikipedia, you have traces of refutation events. No? When somebody thought, no, that paragraph is wrong, and they remove the actual link to the source, they remove the paragraph, would be evidence that that source was kind of backing up something that was inaccurate according to Wikipedia editors. So the whole idea is that is very simple. It's just saying, okay, when a source is trustworthy, no, is what I was just trying to say, is either because the contributions of this source, they are verified more frequently. So for example, in the case of all these question and answer sites, if it turns out for a user, every time that answer a question, everybody think that is the right question, okay, and answer another question, and again happens that everybody says, oh, that is the right answer, sorry. Then you would say, oh, the user seems trustworthy. Because every time that is answering a question, turns out the crowd thinks that are the right answers. So similarly, you could say, oh, if it turns out the site is more like Wikipedia, where you can refute things, you can refine content, you would say, oh, the contributions are refuted more rarely. That is actually evidence that the source is trustworthy. Okay, so again, here would be the case that perhaps if this source saying is a Kenyan politician and use a link highlighting, oh, Obama is from Kenya, then the source of that link is kind of untrustworthy. If you have this evidence systematically, it would give you somehow some idea of trustworthiness of a site. But here the challenge is the following, no? That at any given time t, like a document may be disputed. Okay, so the verifications may be actually rarer, like more rare, and the refutations may be actually more frequent. If you go, for example, to the article in Wikipedia about the Ukraine kind of Russia conflict on the east, I'm sure at some point in time there were tons of refutations going on. But there was a lack of information what was true, what was false. So at that point, it would be quite difficult to say, no, that information source was actually untrustworthy. Is that the whole situation was untrustworthy. So here the challenge, if we want to define a method that extracts automatically how trustworthy is a source, we will have to be able to kind of distinguish between what is actually the inherent unreliability of the topic or what is the untrustworthiness of the source. Okay, and what we did in this piece of work is basically design a method to do that. No? And here I wouldn't like to tell you like all the details, but only to give you the intuition of how the thing works. So if we see here, like again, this Barack Obama article, no, the situation that we have is that we have some addition of information, and then in red, some refutation of some of this information. Okay, so this is the data that we have, that we can keep track when a link was added to back up a paragraph, or when this link was removed. And given the link, we can say which one is the associated source. So we organize it like this, no? That we say, okay, you have the statement additions, like is for every document, we can keep track of when people were actually adding new content, and we can record the source associated to this new content. So in this, is a Kenyan politician would be we just added content and we store the link that was backing up that. Okay? And at the same time, we can keep track also of the refutation events. That is, every time that a link gets added, a content gets added, we can start a new process that just keep track of whether it got refuted at some point. Okay, so that all these red things is like, okay, in this Kenyan politician, we started here this process, the NR2, that keeps track when it got actually refuted. And so in a way, for each statement, we have also as data the source, the addition time, that is the thing in green, and we have the refutation time if there is any. No, that can be infinity if it never got refuted. So here, now the idea is that we want to see in these statement additions and in these refutations what is due to the source or what is due to the actual evolution of the topic. Okay? And what we did as a model is to just say, okay, every time that things get added, we can think that these additions, there is a rate of additions. That you would say, okay, at some given points in time, there will be more statements that get added, and other times there will be less statements that get added. So a bit idea is to disentangle the article reliability or unreliability part of the rate. This would be something that, okay, the rate is changing over time. For example, when a topic is very popular, maybe many more additions than when it is not popular. So there is one component on this rate that is due to the temporal evolution. And there is some other component that is actually due to statements that got refuted and they get substituted. No? For example, in this situation, when somebody is actually writing something inaccurate, may happen that some other person add a new content just to substitute this old content. So this particular case gives us information about the fact that every time that this source, for example, that was backing up Kenyan, is actually publishing something inaccurate, will trigger new content. So this is the part that is due to the source, because every time that a source gets refuted, induces new content. But this is the part that is due to the article, no? That if a topic is popular, you have more additions per se, not due to the source. And a bit exploiting this idea, no, here I don't give you the math and so on, no, but a bit idea is that we distinguish what is the rate of additions due to the article, what is the rate of additions due to these substitutions, due to the untrustworthiness of sources. In the same way, we can kind of proceed similarly with all these refutations, no, to think of the rate at which things get refuted. Here again can happen that is due to the temporal evolution of the topic that things get more refuted, because simply the topic is actually, there is less agreement among people. Or can happen that is actually due to the source, no? And here a bit idea would be if the source turns out is more more accurate usually, then you would say, okay, the rate of refutations associated to statements of that source is lower, but if it is somehow a source that many times is known to create content that is inaccurate, you would say the rate of refutations is higher. So what our method does is that discover these two components again. And by discovering the second component, you can actually estimate the reliability of a source, the trustworthiness of a source. So what is the magic behind this? No, because it's like you would say, oh, but it's difficult to actually distinguish, given only the refutations or the additions, distinguish what is due to this term or what is due to the other term. But here, when it comes the variability of articles, no, in Wikipedia you have articles about many different topics, articles with many different temporal evolutions. Some articles may be just popular at the beginning. There is tons of additions, but after slowly like stabilize. Some other things like, for example, politicians, if there are elections, there is some peak around the time of the elections. So the idea is that there is a lot of variability. So to be able to reliably estimate what is one component or what is the other component, the one associated to the article or the one associated to the source, has to happen that a source, you see it in several documents. Because then the idea is that if the documents, they are of different temporal evolution, you will see kind of this source under different conditions. So this allows you to disentangle what is the source versus what is the document. And similarly, you would have to actually have that for each document, there is a diversity of sources. Because if for every article, Wikipedia editors would use the same exact sources, would be again difficult to distinguish one effect from the other. Okay, so how do we tested this? Actually, we went to actual Wikipedia now, and we collected, I guess, like 4 years, 5 years, 3 years of data. No, actually a bit more. I don't remember how many years, but up to 2014, but several years of data. And for that, we just focus in the 15,000 web sources that were more frequent. No, because you would have to actually have enough data to be accurate estimations. And for that, these articles were using like 100,000. These sources were using 100,000 articles. And in the end, you have tons of statement additions and refutations. So the hope is that by having massive amount of data, you can tell something accurate about these web sources. Okay? So to give you a bit of a glimpse, what type of things we get, no? If we would try to estimate the first term in the rates, the one due to the temporal evolution of the topic. For example, for this article of Obama, no, you would get both for arrival is what we mean additions, and here removal is refutations, no? And you can see that actually, depending on some events that happen over time, is more likely of additions to happen independently of the source identity. Okay, and also the red line would be more like refutations, no? And a bit the idea is that if there is a gap between refutations and additions, mean okay, statements were added, but actually there were tons of refutations, no? For instance, in this point, there is a very big gap between the blue and the red, saying that there were quite a few additions, but in terms of refutations, there were proportionally much more than, for instance, in this time, no? That you would say there were tons of additions, but not a huge number of refutations in comparison. So this can give you actually ideas of how controversial was the topic at that time. If you go to some of the events that happened once, no, like when there was this military intervention in Libya, the article actually at the beginning was very active, both in terms of additions and refutations, but slowly like stabilized. No? That would be when I was talking that you have actually variety of temporal patterns. So in terms of trustworthiness of the sources, what we can do is that, for example, what you see here is each of these axes is like for different topics. And what you see in red is according to our estimation of the trustworthiness, what is the probability that a statement by that source gets refuted in less than 6 months. Okay, and what we compare here is the BBC, that I guess, I'm not sure if many of you would agree, but usually people think it's kind of a serious established news site. And Breitbart, that some of you maybe may know, is one of these kind of a bit ultra right-wing American site that somehow is many times to be known to publish information that is kind of inaccurate. And if you compare here for the topic of politics, the greater this axis in red is the more inaccurate the site is, that there is like, let's say twice more inaccurate. I mean, it's twice as likely to be refuted in the case of Breitbart than in the case of BBC. When you have a statement, it's twice more likely that Breitbart actually gets refuted. So it gives a kind of a metric of trustworthiness that has an interpretation. It's not only a score that you would say, oh, the score is 5 and this score is 3, but gives some semantic meaning. No? If you take a statement from this news source, it's twice more likely to get refuted over time, to be false. Yeah. It's something that before I didn't say, but the second term, we do like a topic analysis, so it's per topic. I cannot tell you now, but what I can tell is that in the end, I think I will give the reference. We have a web app where you can actually write the domain of any news source and gives you actually the words associated to the topic. Because somehow when I say politics, it's not that the method says, oh, this is politics. It's that we see the words associated to that topic and we thought, oh, that is kind of politics. But right now I cannot tell you the one that is here on the top, no? Yeah, this one here. I cannot tell you. But I encourage you to check the online thing, and you can, maybe it's a topic that the words, they don't match to anything that you can identify, but hopefully not. Yeah. This might happen. This is kind of in average, no? It's not that I would say for every statement you can tell certainly. It's based on all the statements that they have a link from BBC in Wikipedia. Somehow, kind of the percentage of them that they end up being falsified when you control for the temporal evolution of the topic. Okay. So this was kind of about the first setting and about the first problem. Here I kept it all in kind of try to remove any equation here. So, but if you want to know more details, let's say about what does it mean to disentangle or what is this rate thing and so on, is in this web conference paper that is online. So you can ask me offline and I can point you at. So regarding the second setting, no, is the idea of saying, okay, can we detect and prevent the spread of fake news, no? But in this case, in a social network. And I guess the motivation is a bit similar to the motivation for the case of Wikipedia, but in the end, it's something that, I mean, this statement, I don't know if anybody would disagree, but a bit the ultimate goal would be, okay, to help people decide based on some facts or truth. Maybe they have they disagree with you or you disagree between each other, but somehow that the disagreement is coming out of somehow facts, not like just false facts. Okay. So here, when we say that we resort to the crowd and we resort to fact-checking services, is that we try to optimize a procedure, an algorithm that somehow several social media sites, they are actually, we know at least Facebook is trying to do this. No? That is as follows. You can imagine here that what you have on the left-hand side is a social network. Okay, this is kind of a toy social network, but the point is I think it makes the point. And here what you see the arrows, no, is a directed network in the sense that if it happens that S is connected to D like this, means that actually D is following S. So whatever S publish, D may see it. Okay, so for example, in this picture here, when Christine posts, may happen Beth see this content. So it's just indicating the flow of information. So what you see on the right-hand side is the type of signals we have access to. No? So it can happen that at some point, Christine is sharing some piece of information, some link. Okay? So at that point is when it happens that actually Bob or Beth may be exposed to this link. So at that point, can happen that actually Beth gets exposed to it and it actually can flag it. So the idea here would be that the social media, the social network, gives you the option of saying, I think this is, I want to report this content. Okay? That is already happening. It's unclear what should you ask, whether you should ask, oh, this is inaccurate, or this is false, or this is inappropriate, no? Because changes. But the idea is that you can flag content. So as the process continues, may happen actually Bob gets exposed to the same link, but actually Bob doesn't think it's dubious or doesn't think it's false. And actually Bob may happen that actually reshares this content, reshares this link. So in the moment that Bob is resharing the link, the problem is that open up the exposure to Joe, and Beth was already exposed, so to Joe. No? That is one of the people that follow him. So at that point may happen, okay, Bob eventually see the content and in this case decides to flag it, okay? Is in the same opinion as Beth, thinks the whole thing may be actually false. And the process can continue that Chris, for example, independently finds the same link and posts the same link, and then David is exposed, and David also thinks it's dubious and flag it. So a bit idea is that when there are sufficient number of flags, then you would decide, oh, this piece of news is actually kind of, there is evidence that may be false. So you decide to send it for fact-checking, to one of these sites that volunteers would investigate the case. But the problem here is that when I say when there is sufficient number of flags, but I mean, you have hundreds of thousands of things that are spreading. So what is sufficient number of flags? No, because it may happen something is very viral and then has quite a few flags, but it's because millions of people saw it. And maybe something that only 100,000 people saw it has a bit less flags, but in proportion is more. So how do you reason about that? No? So if we put a bit the challenges more like, let's say, one after the other, would be that there is uncertainty on the number of exposures, no? That you would say, you don't know how many people they are going to be exposed to this information. So if you send it for fact-checking, but turns out in the end, the news only like 10 people would see it, maybe it's not worth, no? Because the effect would be actually not that large. Okay, so we have to take into account these kind of probabilistic exposure models in the sense that there is some uncertainty, some probability that people will get exposed. Then there is the problem here of, okay, that flags can be manipulated, no? That is already happening, not for flags in particular, but for many things. That there are people that they are being paid by some organization, some whatever, some kind of evil entity behind to kind of manipulate these signals, no? So you need to have like methods that they are robust to kind of this aggregating these flags in a way you try to filter the mistakes, even if they are intentional or not intentional. Can be also mistakes of people in a kind of a genuine way. And the other two things is that, okay, what we just said before, that fact-checking is costly, and there is a trade-off always between, let's say, the number of flags that you have and the exposures that you have. Because if you rely on flags, it's because people were already exposed to it. So if you want to be certain that what you send for fact-checking, you have an estimate that is kind of accurate, you have to find like this trade-off between leaving it spread for a while to get signal, but at the same time, not too much. So we have to have like some kind of a optimal fact-checking procedure in the sense that we want to find the right balance between having somehow evidence that something may be fake, so maybe worth to fact check, but at the same time that is not spread to everybody. So here I will give you a few kind of hints of our solution, not of everything, because I mean, we don't have time to go so much into the details. So a bit idea now is that for the shares and exposures, we need to have some machine learning model that somehow is able to predict at which rate people are going to be exposed to information, or at which rate people actually are going to share or reshare this information. So these type of models allow us to predict whether something is going to be viral, and to predict how many people will be exposed to it if we let it go. And use information from the network, and use information, historical data of saying, well, turns out this user is always resharing what this other user is actually posting, and things of that sort. And then a bit idea is that we also have to estimate like the probability that something gets reshared, the probability that something gets flagged. So that comes all into the model, no? That we want to be able to actually know if something is fake, what is the probability that somebody will actually flag it, versus if something is not fake, what is the probability that would be flagged. And here the actual thing we try to optimize would be the rate at which we fact check information. That here, when I talk about rate, is a way of saying when to fact check information, but in, let's say, an aggregate way. That is something that you repeatedly fact check things. It's not only you decide one time. You have to decide over continuous time at which rate you should do this. And here, one of the challenges now is that this thing that I was saying, the probability of fact checking, is very different if something is fake, or sorry, the probability of flagging is different if something is fake or something is not fake. But if you have an algorithm, you want to estimate whether something is fake, so you don't know which probability of flagging you have here, because actually whether something is fake or not is what you try to find out by fact checking. So that is one of the challenges, that over time you want to actually estimate, oh, what is the probability of flagging that I'm dealing with, either the one of misinformation or the one of something that is not misinformation. And a bit one of the other concepts that we use in our solution is this idea of saying that the rates of exposure, how many people get exposed to the information over time, gives you some evidence of whether something is viral, and the flags give you evidence whether something is misinformation. And we have a way of combining these two to kind of have an estimated rate of misinformation, that you can think of it as the potential for the amount of people that will get exposed to misinformation over time. Okay? So if some piece of news, this rate is very high, doesn't mean only that the information may be actually fake, but means also that this information may be actually viral. So it's something that you would like to stop, because if your goal in the end is to minimize the amount of people that gets exposed to misinformation, you would like that this rate of misinformation is low in the whole network. And the slide that I have with one equation was simply to kind of tell you, well, maybe I'm not going to try to explain this, but a bit idea now is that given these models, these machine learning models of exposures, of share, reshare, and flags, we can actually find the rate of fact checking that is optimal. And for that, we rely on something that if for the experts in the audience, if there is any, we use stochastic optimal control. That in short is like we know how to solve the problem at this setting. And to give you a glimpse of what is the optimal solution, because it's something that is actually not too difficult to understand, is as follows, no? That what the solution is saying, you can forget about this Q, but what it's saying, the rate at which you fact check things should be proportional to the rate of misinformation. So if S is simply one story, if we know that this story has a very high chance of being viral and being misinformation, you should prioritize that. Okay, so if you want to take a take home of this second part, a bit idea would be that it doesn't matter only that something may be fake to send it for fact checking, but matters also if there is some prospect that will be viral. Because in that case, even if there is no like tons of evidence of being fake, may happen that affects many people in case it does. And since I guess I'm in 46, I had here, okay, some intuition on how the algorithm actually worked, but I think we can quietly jump over this. And you can talk to me offline if you want to know. And a bit idea, how do we verify that the whole thing works? No, we have some data sets that is from the Twitter and Weibo. That Weibo is this Chinese site that is similar to Twitter, where we have like tons of these shares, reshares. We know when thousands of users were sharing and resharing some number of stories. No, that these stories they were sent to Snopes, to this fact-checking site, so we know whether it was true or whether it was false. Okay, and a bit idea, what we don't have, unfortunately, is that there is no, actually, is not deployed widely through Facebook. Facebook is not like completely, let's say, cooperative on giving that data. To say we don't have the data of how many people, which people flag it, or how many people were actually exposed. We know when people share it or reshare it, but not when people were exposed. So in this case, this data, we actually simulated with the models. And a bit idea is that given this, we just try to see what would have happened if the algorithm would have been in place. And here to see in terms of some metrics, no, that we say, okay, we want to assess the precision of our algorithm. That means how many things that we send for fact checking, whether actually fake eventually, and how much misinformation reduction we achieve. That would be how many people we prevented from being exposed to misinformation without knowing it. In the sense that this piece of news, we send it for fact checking before they were exposed to it. Okay? And we compare with several baselines that is some of the algorithms that they try to do things that they seem reasonable, but not that they are optimal, let's say. And here what you see is for I think the Twitter data set, this is number of fact check stories, and here number of fact check stories, and what you see here is the precision, and what you see here is the reduction. No, that a bit idea is that the reduction you would like to be higher in the plot. You would try to be in the number one. So the more stories you fact check, the closer you are to actually one. And here in blue is our algorithm. Okay, that achieves, I don't know, with respect to the baselines, maybe like 30% gain in many of the regimes. And in terms of precision, it's kind of the same thing. You maybe wonder, oh, but this number of fact-checking stories means that if I'm allowed to fact-check 20 stories, then how the algorithms would perform. No? So this is something that you have to choose, like how many things you can fact-check. And in fact-checking 40, all the methods converge to the same thing because there are 40 stories or 40-something stories. Yeah, and the idea over time, no? Over time, here what you see is the number of people that gets exposed to misinformation for our methods in blue or for the other baselines, no? And the thing that is on the top would be what would have happened if you wouldn't have algorithm. That is as many as these people would get exposed to misinformation, like 40,000. Here in our method would reduce this to 20,000 or something like that. But it's a bit idea. And a bit the future work would be, okay, can we deploy that in practice? And for that, Facebook was not very willing to share the data, but was willing to, one of my students is doing there an internship in this fake news team. So a bit idea now, we actually know that, okay, what they are doing is not super optimized, and the idea is to help them optimize that. And with this, I think is all I had. And also a little advertisement that we have internships and PhD positions and postdoc positions. And if this sounds interesting, you can just check the website. Thanks.
Thank you, Manuel. And I think we can open the QA session. And my first question, if you don't mind,
Sure.
would be, so for instance, taking this Wikipedia case. So as far as I understand, you take some like sentences, some facts that appear and disappear then. And for instance, if we have this, that Barack Obama is Kenyan politician, so do you use any NLP and specifically semantic techniques to detect actually that same semantically equal sentences written in different syntaxes?
No. We use something very simple. We just track whether a link appears or disappears, but would be super interesting if you are more sophisticated in the way that you judge whether it was a refutation or not, would work better. Yeah, but we don't do that. Even if you would say maybe sometimes it's not like black or white, maybe that it's not a complete refutation, it's something between 0 and 1 or whatever. So it would be very interesting to actually include that to improve the assessment. Yeah.
And also, I can imagine that in this, uh, infinity war against between like truth and false, they could be, and actually we do know specifically here in Ukraine that there could be such behavior that, so for instance, some article edited by this, I don't know, evil side guys that actually they delete the truth sentences. I mean, and if in this case, have you any, I don't know, evidence, or have you any investigation to see the patterns, for instance, in this deletion of facts from some specific editors in Wikipedia?
We didn't do that, but that sort of considering the identity of the editor and try to judge whether an editor is trustworthy would be very interesting, because besides it's not just a variation of the theme, because if you add this component of saying whether what they delete was actually true, no, and comes back, that gives evidence also that this person was inaccurate at judging. Right now we are assuming just the editors are kind of the truth, let's say, or that they are judging. Sure, we are not saying deterministically, they can make mistakes, but we are not considering there is an adversary across the editors in Wikipedia. But would be super interesting, I mean, to consider that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from audience?
So this would be maybe a better question for somebody inside Twitter or Facebook, but I was thinking about it, that actually it would be nice if in Facebook and Twitter there would be like these warning flags like are in also Wikipedia, that, for example, sometimes Wikipedia happens that there are these warning signs that Wikipedia article doesn't comply with Wikipedia style guide. It's written like advertisement. So probably it would be nice if Twitter and Facebook had something similar, that this post was flagged by 20, let's say 20% of user, it might be a fake news or something like that.
Yeah, one of the things that they did some test, no, or what I'm aware of trying to say, so for example, the page in the Snopes or PolitiFact or some of these third-party things saying, oh, this is inaccurate or this is accurate, but seems that that was not stopping people from just sharing it. What they are trying now is to say, when you actually have something that you doubt whether it's misleading and so on, to give like other points of view about the same topic. It's like they would recommend you, okay, if you think this is interesting, maybe this other article and this other article would give you more context. No, and there maybe it's somehow the opposite view. But in terms of telling them directly, oh, this may be inaccurate, the way it's written is dubious and so on, they are testing whether it may help to actually show like alternative points of view.
And actually, in follow up to this, I trying test to differentiate between, because it's something that you directly say it's a fake news because of the source, and people just say this source is a fake news, and it's the thing they're reading is trust. But I mean that way that it will just say, look, this is a post, and like 20% of people who read it think it's a fake news. That will be not actually
but
about.
what I mean is that for the people that are convinced that is true, um, according to the test, doesn't help so much to tell them, oh, a percentage of people, this Snopes thing is false and is because some other people report it. They would also tell you, well, is that some other people, they are just spreading fake news that is the opposite. So in that sense, they try to say, oh, to just hide a little bit the thing. They are not telling people directly, oh, this thing that you like to read is wrong, is false. But they are saying maybe you should check out this other view.
Okay, got the strategy.
But,
okay.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to ask you about the transition between you were talking about the mechanism which allows to to determine when this is possible to make fact checking in social media. And I wanted to ask, basically, you were talking that there is one machine learning algorithm which decides if it is necessary to do some fact checking, and after that you start another machine learning algorithm which performs fact checking. Am I
No,
correct?
for the fact checking itself, right now we are saying there will be some organization, humans, that they would do an investigation to say, oh, to investigate whether something is true or false. So in that sense, it's a bit different. There are some other lines of work in machine learning that they try to say, detect automatically whether something is true or false. But then you wouldn't have a budget of, oh, you cannot send everything for fact checking. Your algorithm, you can send everything to the algorithm. But the idea would be, in this case, we gather some evidence and then we send it to humans to actually verify whether the algorithm was right or not and send that thing for fact checking.
Okay, thank you very much.
Questions from this side? No?
Yes, thank you very much. This is fascinating. And well, I think
Thanks.
about fake news. Well, I'd like to approach it in a way that, fake news is not just a random event and it's not just some sort of a fun thing that happens on the internet. So this is a specific tool designed by some actors who would like to use fake news to attack their opponents. So what I want to say is that someone is conscious behind this fake news. So perhaps every time you present an algorithm to detect it, there is another person who tries to develop an algorithm to outsmart your algorithm. And I think my question is quite general. I just like to know whether you have thought about it and whether you have detected any evidence that the behavior, the spread of fake news has become more sophisticated and more complex with time. Yeah. And the second part of my question is that, perhaps if I wanted to outsmart your algorithm, I would think that, okay, fewer people are going to be exposed to fake news, but perhaps I'm not interested in the number of people, but in the quality of these people, sort of eigenvector
like
way of thinking.
Targeted.
Yeah, maybe some targeted segments of population. So have you thought anything, in this direction? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. Part of the idea is to say, part of the system is to rely on humans and to say, okay, if they convince the majority of the population to kind of help them to tweak that thing, or they have a number of users that are fake and it's just humans flagging things, or they have a system that is automatically flagging things, is a problem. No? But the hope is that it's not just an algorithm that automatically tells whether something is fake or not based on features, that then you could imagine some evil person or entity to try to just change the wording so that the algorithm fails. Here we are not using anything, I mean, could be used, but we are not using anything of saying use the language or things like that. The problem that is a challenge is that I don't know if you noticed, but many of the techniques that they use to mislead humans of saying the title of articles, they became much less informative over time in general to make people to actually click on it. No, like, whatever, you are not going to believe blah, 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 click on it and so on. And the problem is that even normal media, I mean, you go to, I don't know, some whatever, for example, in The Economist, this magazine, they use many times these type of titles, no? And you would say, maybe inside there is no lie. There is nothing, but maybe there is some opinion, but let's say there is no like a false fact, but then becomes very difficult even for humans to distinguish. And the thing that I think has the biggest influence is when people that they have some influence, they start to actually deny facts that are true. No, that is not maybe is when you start to doubt even of sources that are like actually genuine, is when it gets more difficult. That is, I think, what is happening in the US. No, that Trump start to attack all like normal news media, and then some people that start to be confused, they start to doubt about everything, not only like dubious sites but also normal sites. That has consequences, but that is something that sure is kind of a problem. But,
So thanks for the nice presentation and talk, and really interesting problem. So what I was wondering about is, because you mentioned you had the student, you have the student who works in the fake news team of Facebook. What took them so long to tackle the problem? Because it's been going on for a while. And yes, it has many technical challenges as you propose, but then Facebook has amazing engineers, data science team. So
yeah,
do
I
you
think
think they
it's
had also economic incentive to let
well, that
this?
for sure. That yes, they do, because I mean many things are sponsor ads. It's like actually people pay to. I mean this thing that I saw of the Pope and Trump. I mean they pay for this to be a sponsor post, and then when people click on it, they actually there is advertisement and everything. So there is a actually they are earning money with this, but the thing that maybe they were not aware of this, that this is happening. And I think even that is not, I'm not even so certain. I mean, people say, oh, in the US, change the outcome of the election. Maybe it happens that there were millions of ads that were dubious, but it's even difficult to tell whether that has an actual effect on the people. No, that I'm not doubting it did or not, but it's not really quantified either. So I think they were not quantified it either. They were just thinking this is some conspiracy theories. But then when it appeared in general media and everybody starts to talk about it, is when they started to think, oh, maybe we have a problem. No?
Right.
But also with all the problems with privacy in Facebook, that now people are really thinking, oh, it's horrible that there was this leakage of information and so on. But all these third-party apps that they have access to Facebook, people were using it many years ago. I mean, there were tons of apps that they were asking you for consent to see your profile and friends. These apps was obvious what they wanted was the data. The app was a survey. It was kind of like a little game that was not of any use. So I think it's the awareness of the public that now people care. And then is when they actually care about it. But I'm not sure they were aware of the scale of the problem.
Right.
But I don't work in Facebook. I cannot tell.
Cool.
What I know is that now they try to really be careful about it. I don't know if, but I mean, they have a business interest.
Right. Interesting. Cool.
I have a short question. Yeah, first of all, thank you for your talk. It's very hot topic. So, how do you process jokes? Is it coming from trustworthy or not trustworthy editors? Or because in social media, what is shared is mostly jokes about something which is maybe reliable, but others classify it as fake or something.
Yeah, that
so
is a.
what do you do?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Is that somehow, I mean, what for some people would seem like a joke, and you would say, oh, this is a joke. For others, they believe it, no? So I guess the thing that these methods, they don't address is the issue that I think is more important even than this is when some piece of news it's not that some people, if something is fake, but everybody flag it, everybody can tell this is fake, I don't believe it. Sure, that is not maybe something that you care about, no? Because you would say that is maybe a joke. Everybody laugh, okay, everybody think it's false. But it's something people are not able to distinguish. That is the problem, no? Because you would say, oh, the more people they doubt whether something is false or true, that is something you want to actually do something about it. No, that is plausible, but it's very difficult. I mean, it's we don't have a solution, and that is very difficult. And even somehow, I think that is a bit of a pity is that the well has become a well that is sometimes very difficult to make jokes because it becomes a bit that somebody can get offended and so on. So it's becoming a bit, yeah.
So what's actually most worrying for me about these fake news things that actually it's not becoming more about the facts, but now it's actually becoming about beliefs. Because for example, even in my family, it's becoming like I think what some people in my family read is just fake news and part of like hybrid warfare. But on the other hand, they think that what I'm reading is just part of Western propaganda. They just try to hide the trust from me. And the problem is really about beliefs. And it was interesting from your last answer that actually like the strategy is not to tell what is fake or what is true, but to rather make sure that everybody will have variety of opinions. So it is like the main strategies in how they export to?
From what I'm aware of, yes, but I think they are distinguishing the problem of detecting whether something is false to what to do afterwards. And I think what to do afterwards is more difficult because it's psychology. I mean, it's not. It's a combination of things, but it's not that it's so clear what will work or even what you want to do. Depending who you ask in which country will tell you matters more one thing or another.
Do you have any numbers, maybe how much budget there is to verify something, or yeah?
You mean like the queues in Facebook? Like you would say over time, how many things
like
they can send for
organizations that exist, and how many are there around, or is there maybe also a possibility to crowdsource it on people?
Right now, what I know, I mean, I don't remember. Actually, I think they didn't. I mean, what I know of is through my student, but they didn't say a number. They say, okay, that the queue that they send things for fact checking to this organization. Right now, they are testing this, so it's kind of a mess. I don't think they have yet like a production level thing that the rate is stable or that the whole thing is being tested. Regarding this thing of crowdsourcing, I mean, there is a kind of a organization of journalism that I don't remember now the name, but it's that volunteers that they have some website that, for instance, they claim, oh, we are going to fact check things. So they can apply to this organization to say, oh, that they actually go there or online, or I'm not sure. They verify what is their procedure, what is their best practices, and so on. And if they agree that this volunteers organization is following like good practices according to whatever good practices they establish, then they allow them to be part of this thing. And then, for example, Facebook right now, they claim, oh, no, we are going to only use organizations that they are actually verified by this meta organization. No, because the idea is that you could also say, no, one of the questions before you volunteer, but after you try to make up a justification. No, so to avoid that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's have a last question.
Well, this is just a quick follow-up. It's not a question, it's an opportunity to say something that actually in Ukraine we have an organization like that, a fact-checking organization, and some people who work in this organization, they're present here, so we can chat about it later. But one of the things that this organization does when fact-checks messages of some politicians or opinion makers, they have three options. They don't say it's fake or truth, they also have an option of manipulation. And having this small thing in between actually helps to communicate the findings to the wider audience. So this is one of the, I think, good practices that have been developed here in Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that also relates perhaps to what some of the social media are trying to show alternative points of view. Maybe a piece of news is not entirely false, or some part is up to opinion. Maybe if you see some of the opinion, you start to, hopefully the people get educated to say, oh, that they contrast the two opinions and they see what are things that maybe they should question.
Great, thank you. So if you have more questions, I think you can chat with Manuel offline as well. So Manuel will stay with us at least for lunchtime tomorrow, right? Yeah, and then going back. So let's give another round of applause to Manuel. Thank you so much for excited talk. And tomorrow we will continue our conversation about, I don't know, trustworthy, etc. in machine learning. So tomorrow topic will be ethical machine learning, how to make machine learning fair and transparent to you and me. And the speaker will be Novi Quadrianto from University of Sussex. And he is co-founder and co-director of Predictive Analytics Lab. So please come. Thank you.